It's Wings Week again! We're back with more Wings Week! Part 2 and Part 3 today. We're actually going to be doing both short film number 2 and short film number 3 in one video today. Welcome on in, everybody. Hope that you're having a good day. Whether it's your first time here, you were joining us, thank you so much for being here with us. You're loved, appreciated, always welcome here, and you are enough. We're just going to get right into this today because there's plenty to do and plenty to talk about. So let's go. So I'm going to do the same thing we did last time. I'm going to watch it all the way through, and then we're going to go back. We're going to pick it apart.
My parents' house made up one rhythm. This rhythm was familiar to me in almost every way. Mother and father, love and strictness, model behavior, and school.
Okay. We'll go back and find where that quote's from here in a little bit, because I know that I think it's from chapter 1 as well. Okay. So he's looking at the block cards. Interesting. That shadow was really cool. So I'm guessing that that represents J-Hope. What? Okay, so his is different. And what am I? Show me the way, stop me, let me breathe. He bit the apple here. Creepy. Inside me, I'm trapped and dead. Interesting. Okay, well, there is plenty there to talk about. There's plenty there. No, we don't need to go to the next one. There's plenty there. Okay. Be right back. Okay, so I think that this is the part. Again, the translations for these books are all different, and I really wish that, like, I had the version of the book that they're using for the translations, because, like, it seems like there are much simpler, like, some of the words that they use in my version of the book are just, like, much more of an old way of using language, I guess.
My parents' house made up one rhythm.
Okay.
This rhythm was familiar to me in almost every way. Mother and father, love and strictness, model behavior, and school.
Okay. So, all right. In order to understand, I just wanted to make sure and show you guys that again. In order to understand where I'm going with this, because I read this passage while I was away, I'm going to read a little bit more of this. So if you guys are really, really interested, hang tight, because I think in order to really properly understand what's going on here, you need to understand where this quote is in a larger context, okay? It's not much longer, but so we start with the same thing, just it's going to sound a little different. So the one world was my home, but it was even narrower than that, for it really comprised only my parents. This world was for the most part very well known to me. It meant mother and father, love and severity, good example, and school. It was a world of subdued luster, of clarity and cleanliness. Here were tender, friendly words, washed hands, clean clothes, and good manners. Here the morning hymn was sung and Christmas was kept. In this world were straight lines and paths which led into the future. Here were duty and guilt, evil conscience and confession, pardon and good resolutions, love and adoration, Bible texts and wisdom. To this world our future had to belong. It had to be crystal pure, beautiful, and well ordered. The other world, however, began right in the midst of our own household and was entirely different, had another odor, another manner of speech, and made different promises and demands. In this second world were servant girls and workmen, ghost stories, and breath of scandal. There was a gaily colored flood of monstrous, tempting, terrible, enigmatical goings-on, things such as a slaughterhouse and prison, drunken men and scolding women, cows and birth throes, plunging horses, tales of burglaries, murders, suicides. All these beautiful and dreadful, wild and cruel things were round about in the next street, in the next house. So clearly, I'm going to go out on a limb and say we're going to do 3 right after this. But if we just take lie on its own, I think that lie, well, a lot of the quotes, the 2 quotes that we saw so far were both from Two Worlds, which is the first chapter. In Jungkook's Begin, all the things that transpired in there for the most part came from chapter 4 of the book, which was Beatrice, the painting and things like that, and that story and him. But this is mostly from chapter 2. So we have something very, very interesting going on here. Let's talk about the apple because it's super important now that you guys understand this. In the beginning of Damien, Sinclair, the main character of the story, is basically talking about the difference between the goodness, which is his household, the garden, which it's referred to oftentimes, and the darkness. And it's kind of like, again, we talked about a tale of adulthood, of losing innocence being childhood, but innocence also could be sinning. There's all kinds of different representations we can take on that. So it's interesting, though, because there's a significance to the apple in the book. And the apple in the book is actually the beginning of Sinclair's journey away from innocence and into adulthood. So in the story, again, spoilers, in the story, Cromer, who is another boy in the neighborhood, is like putting Sinclair up to a bunch of things. And Sinclair ends up telling a lie about stealing some apples from one of the people that live in the neighborhood. And because of this, Cromer takes advantage of him and basically blackmails Sinclair into doing things for him, saying that he's basically going to tell his parents that he stole. Now, the reality is Sinclair actually didn't steal. He just bragged about stealing, but he was so afraid of letting down his parents that Cromer blackmails him for money. And so this leads Sinclair down this entire path where Sinclair ends up like not just robbing his own piggy bank, but like doing things to find money, you know, stealing change from around the house, stealing like small things, and ends up basically being Cromer's kind of like kid slave at the time. But as he goes down this, literally the apples which were stolen, he basically feels that his innocence is being lost, and he starts pulling away from his family. He starts pulling away from his father, especially, and we see kind of like that loss of innocence happen. So he's basically gets kicked out of the garden. So it's interesting to see the apple here because I think that we have 2 sides going on in Jimin here. So the second part to Jimin, though, that I think is really, really important to understand is when we're talking about that loss of innocence, it all came down to the lie about the apple. So it makes sense that Jimin's story here is in lie and the apple is involved there. And also the way that Sinclair talks about it in that chapter that I just read to you, or in that small portion that I just read to you. Even though he talks about the two worlds, it's almost like there is like a temptation, that there's something like desirable about the other world. So when Jimin takes a bite of the apple afterwards, even though at first he's trying to push it away, when he takes a bite of the apple and kind of makes that smirk, it's kind of like that other side where we saw like the dark screen happen. And there's clearly an internal lie happening inside Jimin that has put him into this place. Now, I don't know everything, but if I had to guess, especially because the whole point of this chapter of the book is that Sinclair has a lot of pressure on him to be good, to be perfect, because his family carries this kind of air of godliness, right? And he talks about that a lot. So if I had to guess, I'm going to guess that Jimin probably is in a similar place. He's in a facility, which means his family clearly has enough money to put him in some kind of facility to get help. And at some point, we know that it looked like Jimin was trying to commit suicide. Now, whether that was because of the loss of something, whatever it was, I don't know. But if it partially could be that he's feeling and he has this kind of this double side because either a lie took place or he's got this undue pressure from his family that has like made him hide his true feelings and his true intentions towards them, towards others, towards himself. And so we see that internal struggle here, which is really, really cool. We also see the pair here, though, because we know that the pills are attached to J-Hope's character, and he's looking in the bed. It's almost like he's like longing for J-Hope's character. So I think that we see an additional pair there as well. And just to go in here really quick, which is kind of interesting. So we have this automated arm, which I guess theoretically could kind of be because the automated arm is giving him mundane tasks, much like Cromer gives Sinclair mundane tasks in the chapter regarding the apple to do, because he can't afford to pay him. And so Jimin is essentially on this one end. He's lying to everybody. He's lying to himself. He's lying to him. His egg is kind of broken, right? We have the whole thing with the birds and the rebirth and things like that. We had that in Begin with the feathers kind of rising out of Jungkook at the end, kind of like a whole rebirth thing. And somebody did mention in the comments like about the FINIX and Carl Jung. There's a huge Carl Jung portion to this book. I think that we're going to go deeper into that when we get done with all 7, because these videos are already long enough as it is, and I just don't want to confuse too many people with that. So I think that would be better for the summary video. But the representation is like the rebirth. And specifically in the story, that the only time in our lives that we're able to both die and experience a rebirth is from our adolescence into adulthood. Because when we actually physically die, we don't experience a rebirth. You can, whatever your religious beliefs are, just going from the story's context, it's like that's kind of the time that we experience that. And each one of these boys is going through that, which is just really, really impressive to see. I don't know what this sign says. So the only thing that's frustrating is we're watching the thing. I don't know what the sign says. So it'd be cool if we could do that. But he talks about, like right here, he's literally talking about being one time being pure. And we see the feathers here, again, not just a symbolism from the birds and the pureness and purity aspect of it, the white on the outside, but the innocence aspect. But then as he's caught in a lie, then everything gets darker, right? So we have the tub here again, and this is like, I don't know if he's hiding his depression, if he's hiding his issues from everybody else that he's having, but he's literally, the other side of him is literally falling in. And I'm guessing that's probably why he's in whatever this facility is that he's here, is because he's probably hurt himself or tried to commit suicide. Now, this says, show me the way, stop me, let me breathe. Now, I don't know if this is a direct cry for help, because my assumption right now is that obviously Jin has a large role in what's going on. Whether or not they're part of Jin's psyche and it's actually Jin feeling this way, or that Jin is helping them, I think that there is a cry for help to somebody. And I don't know if this is something that Jin is going to then hear and then try to assist him in fixing whatever the issue is. That I don't know. And then lastly here, again, we'll show the inside me, I'm trapped and dead. We had the eating of the apple. We had the smirk. And then he turns it at the painting here, which I find kind of interesting. I don't really understand what the painting represents in this context, because we haven't seen something like this yet. And the color, the only thing I can think of is the color scheme is kind of similar to I Need You, where it's got a lot of like the bluish tints and stuff. But it also kind of reminds me of like what Neverland would look like. So I'm not really certain. And then finally here we have these again, which is interesting because he's looking at the ink blots. And so each one of them, and these are actually ink blots, and each one of them has their own ink blot in the story, which is really very, very cool. So super, super interesting in that, and like crazy how much these tie in to Damien. Like unbelievably crazy how much these tie into Damien, and really do, I think, at bare minimum, it solidifies the innocence to adulthood transcendence that's happening within each of them. At bare minimum, we know that that's one part of the story, at least in a metaphorical sense, that is happening one way or another. There's a lot of other literal things happening here as well. So now let's do video 3. Stigma! How amazing are they? Like, how gorgeous are these? Like,
it was the first fissure in the columns that had upheld my childhood, which every individual must destroy before he can become himself.
okay.
Such fissure and rents grow together again, heal and are forgotten. But in the most secret recesses, they continue to live and bleed.
Interesting. Clearly he's been caught before. He did not look surprised at all. Oh, he's got the Nirvana shirt on again. Oh, we're gonna come back to that. Okay, so now he's wearing lighter clothes. Interesting. The more innocent side. White cloak. Oh, wow. Okay, so he's back here. Dad's an alcoholic. He's trying to console his sister, who's clearly just been beaten.
그때 나한테 왜 그랬어? I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, my sister. 숨겨도 감춰도 지워지지 않아. So cry, please dry my eyes. 저같이 내 죄를 비춰줘. 더 깊이 죽을 것만 같아. 그 벌을 받게 해줘. 제 죄를 사해줘. 제발.
They're only different. Whoa, 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 whoa. Hold on there. That was very fast. Here, there are only different whales that speak different languages. Interesting.
전화 한 통만 하게 해주세요.
Just make one phone call. Okay, so he's got the murder thing. Oh, wow. Okay. Gonna go find out where this one was. Hold on. We'll be back. Okay, I found our spot, but before we did that, I had something else that I had actually written down during the last video, and I didn't touch on it. This is interesting. So we saw this during the time where like the pills came out, where it looked like he was longing for J-Hope. So this says Eva on it, which is interesting because Eva is a chapter in the book and is the mother that rewards Sinclair with chocolate and he has an attachment to. So I don't know what that necessarily pertains to yet, but I just find it interesting because like it's a specific chapter in the book. The chapter is called Eva, so I just wanted to put that in there. Anyway, we're gonna go on to the next part now. Okay, everybody. So again, translation slightly different, but this is the portion. And again, we're gonna really read a little bit more of it, I think, because it makes for a better understanding of what's happening here. So it was the first cleft in the sacredness of parenthood. It was the first split in the pillar on which my childhood had reposed, and which everyone must overthrow before he can attain to self-realization. The inward fundamental basis of our destiny is built up from these events, which no outsider observes. Such a split or cleft grows together again, heals up, and is forgotten. But in the most secret chamber of the soul, it continues to live and bleed. I myself felt immediate terror in the presence of this new feeling. I would have liked to embrace my father's feet there and then to beg his forgiveness. But one cannot beg pardon for something fundamental, and a child knows and feels that as well, and as deeply as any adult. So this is really interesting because we're talking specifically about the father at this point and asking for forgiveness. So we already talked about that the lie about the apples is what sends Sinclair down his spiral to losing his innocence. But one of the things that Sinclair really, really doesn't like within himself is he pulls away from his father more than anybody else, so much so that he basically feels like he has ruined his relationship with his father. So his father is basically, and their relationship, he's metaphorically dead to Sinclair. And Sinclair is metaphorically dead to them. And the reason for that is because Sinclair basically gets like the mark, right? The mark of dishonor because of his behavior. And we see that same kind of behavior here with V. V, because of his home life, because of all these things happen, has this destructive nature, right? Like clearly that was not his first run-in with the police. And we see that in previous videos as well with RM, where they get caught with the police and that he's constantly vandalizing things. And so he's got this destructive nature to him already where he's taking out a lot of these things. And because of that, he also has the mark of dishonor. And then we just add that to the fact that his father is an alcoholic and is abusing his sister. So he now has taken it to the next step and crossed over away from innocence fully into adulthood, into essentially what they call it parenthood in the book, again, because of the translations, but he loses his childhood into parenthood / adulthood because of what he does, taking his father's life. And so it's just very interesting to see this because this is, in terms of transitions, right? It's kind of cool to see that they're literally kind of going in order with each one as Sinclair. Like each one plays a significant portion in Sinclair's life. And we haven't seen as much about Damien yet because, again, I think Damien is a guide. He's one of numerous guides for Sinclair, but I think that Jin probably plays that role. So in the previous videos, we've seen Jin obviously from the outside in, like somehow leading them, right? It all convalesces around Jin somehow. So it makes me think that Jin probably plays more of the role of Damien than anything else. But if these things are happening internally, if these are internal feelings that Jin is having and not just individual characters that they're happening with, that also makes sense because, huge spoilers, there's a portion at the end, it's kind of like the Fight Club thing, where it's not, it's kind of up for interpretation, but that like Damien is actually internally part of Sinclair. That Damien is the things that Sinclair wishes he could be, but can't be on his own. And so therefore, if there's this internalization inside of Jin that's happening, and he's then created all these different things to be able to cope with tragedy or cope with whatever it is, then he is both Sinclair and Damien. And each one of these characters that we've seen so far in Begin, in Lie, and in Stigma now has represented a different portion or a different way of the loss of innocence section that Sinclair or Damien undergo. So very, very, very cool to see that here, especially because specifically V is the one that has the biggest connection with his father in this all, which is just incredible when you think about it. All right, let's I want to look at a couple of other things that happen here. Again, we talked about the vandalism thing. V definitely represents, it seems like, more of like a darker side, because he has already kind of lost most of his innocence, right? He's already doing the sinning things. Even before he kills his father, he's already doing a lot of the things and is much farther along in the Sinclair journey than everybody else. So like even that face there, right? Like he knows what he's doing and he's proud. But then we see here the innocent side of him, which is still fighting. And this is where him and Jin have this like similarity. This obviously, all of this light and darkness much so looks like when Jin was in the bed and looking up. There's a specific spot right here. This hole right here, this cubby hole, looks like when Jin looked up and kind of like the butterfly flew up into it. So we're seeing a lot of the same things, which is part of the reason why I'm kind of like, are they all one person? Is this stuff happening in Jin's head, or is there just some overlap with their storylines? Obviously, we know that there's an overlap with the storylines. But then we have him like internally like crying, and then we get to the puppy part, which is so amazing. Okay, this is interesting because we don't see V's mom in any of this. My guess is here, this kind of like looks like it represents like a motherly figure holding a child. And again, we talked about Eva with Hobie, where they have the part where like, I think that he's also longing for a mother. I think V here too, obviously probably wishes he had a mother, wishes he had somebody there that could be his protector, because his dad clearly isn't his protector and all of the weight has fallen on him to protect his sister. So I think that's kind of interesting here. And I think it kind of shows also, as we're crossing over, kind of his innocent side. Like when he was with his mother, he still felt his innocence and he didn't want to lose that, but he had to. And then we get to the part with the puppy. But the phone booth, this is the same phone booth that we saw in the previous videos, which is interesting, but it's all chained up now. And RM was also in the phone booth before, or around the phone booth, and we had all kinds of stuff written on the phone booth before. V makes a call, which we see at the beginning / end of the episode, and then here he asks if he'd like to make a call. So my guess is like, is this the call that he makes, but somehow it can't go through? And maybe that's how like this whole turn of events starts happening, and maybe part of the reason that why RM might feel guilty is because maybe V tried to call RM after this event happened, but couldn't get through to RM, and so he continued to spiral and then therefore killed his father, because clearly this is probably before he killed his father, or he would be in jail for already. So I'm wondering if like it's like the domino effect that's happening here. We see more of him with like caring for his sister. I think that there's definitely the longing for a mother here again. He ties other things in, the sip that his father takes, the sip here. And then this part is just so this puppy is white and pure and a puppy. It's young. And it definitely, I think, represents the purity in V's heart internally when we look at the good versus evil aspect and the innocence aspect. And here all he wants to do is clearly hold on to this puppy, and then this cage starts coming around him. And please put that light on my sin. It's like this whole thing is like him obviously knowing. I love that they took the clip of him cutting his hair there. Again, kind of like the losing the innocence thing. But when this comes down and the puppy leaves, it's just him left there, dark and alone afterwards, because it's just him left in the cage and the puppy's not there anymore. And so he is one of the farther along ones, I think, on his loss of innocence, because he probably lost his innocence at a much younger age, but that his innocence is in a cage down within him. It still exists, but it's caged up down within him, which is just so freaking incredible here. And then we have at the end, let me make the one phone call. I'm guessing that phone call was to RM, which is why the phone box was there. But we'll find out about that. Oh my God. Well, that's all we have. I feel like this is like, instead of it really being a theory, because there's not a ton of information that they're giving here. I'm sure once I see all of them and can put pieces together, it'll be a little bit easier. But how much these correlate to Damien is amazing. And it's very, very clear and evident. I mean, they're literally starting each video with a quote from Damien. So it's very, very evident that that is all part of this, that the loss of innocence is all part of this, and the similarities between them in each one of these is just fantastic. And I'm so glad. I'm really, really glad that I picked this up before and had read it because of watching Blood, Sweat, and Tears originally, and then like now I'm like really, really into it. So it's very helpful because I already know the story going into this. So it's very, very helpful. But thank you guys so much. Let me know what you thought. Let me know in the comments how you guys have been feeling about this. We have some big, big stuff coming up. Don't forget, tune in Saturday to our live stream. We're going to celebrate my birthday, but we also have a huge, huge announcement for all of you guys. So I hope that you guys can tune in for that. If nobody told you that they love you today, don't forget, I love you. You are appreciated. You are always welcome here in this channel, and you are enough. And last but certainly not least, it was a great day to play. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Everything.